Get ready, Staten Island.
The Ferry Hawks are back at SIUH Community Park July 7th to the 12th for a 6-game series against the High Point Rockers. Tonight, first pitch is at 6:30. It's Thirsty Thursday with $5 Bud and Bud Light drafts. Friday, July 10th, first pitch is at 7 p.m. May the Force be with you on Star Wars Night with post-game kids glow around the bases with special lightsaber training packs.
Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Excuse me. Taxi.
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
And now, Jerry Falwell Jr. Jerry, you with me?
I'm with you, Michael. It's a great reunion today.
Oh, my God, it sure is. Hey, Jerry,
Yep.
Let me ask you this question. If someone told me 15 years ago that you and I would become not just close friends, like family, I probably would have laughed them out of the room. And then, I mean, obviously, we come from different backgrounds, from different experiences, and from different circles. And yet, over time, you and me and my wife and your wife, we've built a friendship that's rooted in honesty and mutual respect. Looking back, what do you think? Tell the listeners here, what brought us together in the first place, and why has that friendship literally stood the test of time?
Well, I, like so many other Republicans, we're sick and tired of the establishment politicians, the professional politicians who would promise the world and never deliver anything. And I was looking for somebody who's a businessman. I'm a businessman. I'm a lawyer. I'm not a pastor. Never saw myself as an evangelical leader, but I was president of Liberty University for 33. I was there for 33 years. We were able to take it from deep in debt to billions in an endowment before I left. But I invited Donald Trump to speak at Liberty in 2012. You arrived at the Lynchburg airport with him, and you and Becky and I hit it off right away. And everybody with the group is so friendly, but you especially. I heard you say on another show that in 2011, you're the one that brought the poll to President Trump saying, look at this, 5% of the American people
it's true.
Say they want you to run for president. And then he didn't do it the next year for various reasons. But over those 4 years, between 2012 and 2016, we became really good friends. And, I remember sitting in your office in 2014, just down the hall from the boss. And you told me, you said, Jerry, he's running for president. He's going to walk down the escalator June 16th, 2015. I could not believe it when it happened on that exact day, 7 months later. And I could tell, I knew then that you were just
right.
Absolutely essential primary in that whole effort to get him to run.
I mean, he wasn't just my boss. He was my friend. But, Jerry, I'm going to remind you, something the listeners are going to think, we really, truly bonded, not just over, of course, the mutual respect that we had, for Donald Trump, but over Justin Bieber. You remember that? Because I remember you had brought your daughter with you as well, and that she was a super fan of Justin Bieber's, who was going to be over at NBC, the outdoor festival, whatever the heck they call that. And my friend was actually one of his agents, and I was able to get you backstage for a meet and greet. And that, I believe, is what ultimately solidified us as family.
Well, my daughter was a preteen at the time, and like all preteens, she was crazy about Justin Bieber. But I couldn't believe that you had those connections. I mean, it truly shocked me. I thought you were all politics, but you know everybody, Michael.
No, man, the guy who was over there involved with Justin Bieber at the record label was a buddy of mine from college, one of my fraternity brothers. But I do want to ask you this, Jerry, because one of the moments that people don't fully understand is actually the important role that you played in bringing the evangelical community closer to Donald Trump during that 2016 campaign. And you may remember that I reached out to you because I knew that your voice carried enormous weight and that you became one of the most important bridges between the Trump campaign and the evangelical voters. Do me a big favor. Talk to the listeners here. Explain to them why the evangelicals were so interested in Trump, why you agreed. I remember you asked me, I need 24 hours, I need to pray on it. And you did. You came back. It was when Trump needed a little boost over there in Iowa, and you and Becky flew out there and you took care of business and you brought the evangelical community where it needed to go.
Well, the evangelicals are average Americans. They're the ones that Trump was running to help. And so it was just common sense. It wasn't because I was the one that was saying it. It's because the message was simple, common sense. We need a president who's a businessman, who's not a professional politician, and we need someone to run this country. And I said something, the line that I used the most was, we're not electing a Sunday school teacher here, because everybody was talking about, well, Trump did this, Trump did that. And that resonated with evangelicals. But evangelical leadership, it didn't resonate with them until after he won the nomination. Then suddenly they became supporters. But their followers became supporters before they did. And interestingly, they have been the ones who I thought they'd be so thrilled with Trump, because they were all pro-life, they were all pro-Israel. No president has been more pro-life than Donald Trump. He got Roe versus Wade overturned. But I was shocked that some of these evangelical leaders, these pastors, didn't like that, because it took that issue away from them. They couldn't raise money on it anymore. Same thing with Israel. I'm not sure Israel would exist if President Trump hadn't gone into Iran. But the same people who have been strong supporters of the state of Israel and raised a lot of money on it are criticizing Trump for doing that. And so it just baffles my mind. But the people, evangelical people, they know what's going on, and they have the common sense, and that's why they came along.
You know, it's funny because in my opening, before speaking to Scaramucci and before my mean mailbag, Michael's mean mailbag, I turned around and I said that you don't have to agree with President Trump on everything. I, for one, I'm a girl dad too, and I happen to be pro-choice. It's not going to affect my relationship with Jerry Falwell. It's not going to affect my relationship with the president. It's not going to affect my relationship it's my personal opinion. But I, too, happen to be pro-Israel. I also believe in a two-state solution, but I am pro-Israel. So you don't have to agree. The famous Ed Koch used to always say, if you agree with me 6 out of 12 times, you should support me. If you agree with me 12 out of 12 times, you should seek a psychiatrist. And that's the truth. You're not supposed to agree with somebody on everything. Otherwise, you're basically living in a cult.
I bet you could never guess who wrote the recommendation letter for me to attend University of Virginia Law School.
Who was that?
It was Ted Kennedy. His family and my family were good friends. We ate in each other's homes. I don't think anybody remembers that. But back in those days, there were a lot of Democrats who would disagree with you without being disagreeable, and they would defend your right to say something whether they agreed with it or not to the death. Where are those people? They're gone.
You mean the old days of like Tip O'Neill? You're right. They are gone.
Right.
But I actually want to finish by asking you this, because it's a question that I get a lot, especially people knowing our personal family relationship. When you look at President Trump's record today, especially on the issues that are important to evangelicals that you were talking about, like religious liberty, the courts, Israel, social issues. How do you believe that the evangelical community views him now? Because you and I were there when I brought in 100 of the top evangelical preachers to the office. And do you remember that they laid hands on him, and Dr. Creflo Dollar and Pastor Paula White, led in the service? I remember that. I still got photos of that. How do they view him now in light of, the various different policies?
Well, I think the average evangelical, 90% of them are more supportive of Trump now than they were 2024 and 2016. And I'm not sure about their leadership. They kind of come and go. But the actual evangelical audience is more supportive of him than ever. And, it's ironic how you, President Trump, and we all went through a really dark time at the same time. I remember Becky and I visited with you in your apartment or your apartment in New York, and went out to dinner with you there when you were at one of your lowest points. I remember you telling me all the things that were going on. And, just people who supported Trump in 2016 are a lot like the signers of the Declaration of Independence. When they signed their name, they knew it was going to cost them their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor, and it did, many of them. And it was really the same for people who supported Trump, especially people like you who are so loyal in the beginning. And with me, I mean,
Yep.
I didn't never expected that. But
I remember it like it was yesterday. Do you remember Trump's face when they started laying hands on him? They put his hands on his hair, on his head, and on his shoulder, and he was sitting there. He was like, because it's not something that I think that he's ever experienced before. But he accepted it. He acknowledged it. He embraced it.
I told President Trump once on his plane, I said, don't ever call on me to pray in public, because Jesus said, pray in your closet, not in the streets to be seen of men like the hypocrites do. And when I was at the White House for a Christmas party, he brought me up on stage, and he remembered that. So instead of asking me to pray, he asked me to say a few words. So that's another little story. But
it's really fascinating to me how the evangelical community accepted him, because he is not what one would think is typical, but they did. And whether you like Trump or you dislike Trump, promises made were promises kept to this community. You agree with that?
Absolutely, 100%. He said, these are the judges. If I get elected, these are the ones I'll appoint to the Supreme Court, because here's where they stand on this issue and that issue. And he appointed every single one of them. Reagan couldn't say that. Bush couldn't say that. None of the rest could ever say that, but he could, and he did. Yeah.
Well, Jerry, I can't thank you enough for being my number 2 here on When You Know, You Know.
Hey, it's an honor. It's an honor to be on your first episode,
and
Michael.
It's an honor to have you as my friend. You, Becky, the kids, the grandkids. I mean, it's truly an honor, and I'm thankful to have you in my life. Well, tell me before we go, what's your take now that Trump and I have sort of cleared the air between us? Because that was something that you talked to me about at least 100 times.
I was so thrilled to hear that, because, you and I have always been friends. He and I have always been friends. And I just hated it that we weren't all friendly at the time. And so it really just made my week last week when I heard that. I don't know what show was you were on, but I heard the recording where you told about what happened 6 or 7 months ago, how the president reached out. And I think it says a whole lot about you and about him, that both of you are willing to let bygones be bygones, to move on, to forgive and forget. And I think that says a lot about both of you, and I'm proud of both of you for doing that.
Yeah, because, look, some pretty bad things were said by both sides, and to be able to put it behind us and move forward, I personally couldn't be happy. I don't want to live, remember I was talking to you, I don't want to live with that weight. I don't want that anger, that angst, and that sadness to sort of take over for me and my family. So, Jerry, you've been a rock as well in my life. I cannot thank you enough for being here with me today. I can't thank you enough for all of the advice and the wisdom, and more importantly, the friendship that you have shown me again and again and again. So let me turn around and say I thank you, and I will definitely again be speaking to you here on the radio on When You Know, You Know, very, very soon.
Well, your friendship has been so special to us over the years, Michael, and thank you again.
Thank you, Jerry. My fellow Americans, if you think you know politics, think again. I'm Michael Cohen, and every week on When You Know, You Know, we're pulling back the curtain on power, politics, media, and the people making headlines. On my new WABC radio show, you'll hear conversations from names that you know. People like Jerry Falwell Jr., Anthony Scaramucci, Alan Dershowitz, and many, many more. Maybe, just maybe, we'll even hear from the president. No scripts, no spin, just real conversations with people who were in the room where it happened. And trust me, we've got some very big surprises coming. Look, I've spent years at the center of politics, controversy, and power. I know the players, I know the stories, and now I'm bringing you inside. When You Know, You Know, Sundays at 5 p.m. on WABC Radio, and When You Know, Unleashed, wherever you get your podcasts. Because with me, you never know who's going to show up.